This is the Sandman podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we're discussing the Sandman Chapter 8, Playing House.
So I'm asleep right now. I'm dreaming.
Yes. And I should like to know how it is you found me.
I heard you talking about my brother. Is he here?
No.
Do you know where he is?
No. But I think he might be with one of my missing nightmares.
She's a nightmare? What would she want with Jed?
I don't know. But I have a feeling it has something to do with you.
Welcome back, fellow dreamers. This is TV Podcast Industries, and this is the Sandman podcast. We're discussing the Sandman Chapter 8, Playing House. I'm one of your hosts, John.
And I'm your other host, Derek.
Welcome. Yes, no Chris, sadly, today. But it is just Derek and myself looking at Chapter 8 of the Sandman. Yes, we will be giving our spoiler-filled discussion on this episode.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Chris isn't feeling great at the moment, and we're going away on holiday in a few days' time, so we don't have time to wait for him to feel better, unfortunately. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, sorry, Chris. Hope you get better soon.
Yeah.
Yes, if you are joining us for the first time, please head on over to tvpodcastindustries.com, where you can subscribe on any dreamlike or nightmarish podcast catcher of your choice. If you want to send in your thoughts, theories, or discussion points, please send in your feedback by email to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com.
Absolutely. We've been loving hearing the feedback about Sandman overall. Even if you're watching it through for a second or third time, we'd love to hear your thoughts on the entire series. We got 3 more episodes to go after this one, so we'd love to hear your thoughts as we get to the closeout of the season, and hopefully we get confirmation of a second season then by the end of our coverage of Sandman.
Let's all dream it, I guess.
Yes, definitely.
And it will happen. Lord Morpheus will make it happen.
Yes. Or Lord Netflix.
Yes, Lord Netflix, of course.
Or Lord Gaiman, who I know has lots of stories that he wants to tell in the second, third, and fourth and fifth seasons.
Yes.
So hopefully we'll hear something very soon.
Yes, fingers crossed, legs crossed, toes crossed, arms crossed, you name it. Rub that old rabbit's foot for sure. But let us get into our discussion of the 8th episode of Sandman. Derek, what are some of the episode details?
Well, executive producers for this show are Alan Heinberg, Neil Gaiman, and David S. Goyer. The episode was written by Alexander Newman Wise. This is his first episode of Sandman, but he was a staff writer on the courtroom drama For the People, starring a young Regé-Jean Page, or should I say pre-massive fame Regé-Jean Page from Bridgerton.
The Bridgerton buttocks, I believe. Yes.
I think that's one of the things he's known for.
Yes. Amongst others.
Exactly. And this episode, once again, was directed by Andreas Baez, who directed episode 7 as well. And John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for Sandman Chapter 8, Playing House?
Sure. In Dream's palace, and despite Rose's potential threat to the dreaming and Lucien's protests, Morpheus agrees to help Rose locate Jed in her dreams and tells her to continue her search in the waking world, with help from his raven Matthew. During the day, Rose and the other guests at the bed and breakfast post signs around Cape Kennedy to get information about Jed's location. As Rose and Hal distribute the leaflets, they attract the attention of none other than the Corinthian, who has learned about Rose's location from Unity Kincaid after posing as a journalist interested in her experience with the sleepy sickness. But recognizing Matthew with Rose, he sets in motion a new plan to find Jed and draw Rose to him. Meanwhile, Lyta is continuing to see her dead husband, Hector, in her dreams, and is reunited with him in the dreaming. Hector attempts to convince Lyta to stay in the dreaming and have a baby with him. When Lyta wakes up, she is visibly pregnant. That night, Morpheus and Rose travel through the dreams of the guests eventually crossing into Jed's dreams, which Galt has manipulated to provide an emotional escape from his abusive foster father. Morpheus rebukes and punishes Galt for stepping outside her duties, though Galt maintains that she disobeyed because she believed it was in Jed's best interest. Galt believes that nightmares can change, and even they can dream. But Morpheus does not relent in his position, and banishes Galt to the darkness. Shouting for Rose after waking up from his dream, Jed is unexpectedly rescued from his uncle's house by the Corinthian. Little does he know that his foster parents lie murdered by his saviour, who has plans to ensnare his sister.
Death and destruction following once again in the wake of the Corinthian wherever he goes.
Just a bit, yes. He certainly got a few new eyeballs to his collection in this episode.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Well, we go in and chat about our top moments from the episode, John.
Yes. First up, yes, Rose continues her search for Jed in her dreams and in the waking world as well. I mean, the episode really kicks off with her and Morpheus after she has come into his realm.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a wonderful moment where, you know, Morpheus almost seems it's almost like an academic interest in Rose being the vortex, but tells her that she is the dream vortex and to keep up the search for her brother in the waking world, whereas he will come to her dreams to help any leads that may have formed during her investigations in the waking world.
Yeah.
But I think he does also believe that Galt is responsible here for Jed effectively missing in action in the dreaming world.
Yeah, he's been cut off from the dreaming world, and really the power that Galt has sounds like it's likely that it's going to be her that is responsible for him gone. I also like that Morpheus sends along Matthew to keep an eye on Rose in the waking world as well. I think that's a really good touch because it leads to a great ongoing joke of Rose not being able to tell the difference between crows and ravens because she keeps seeing blackbirds and going, Matthew?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is really good.
Yeah, it was really good. This was really good. I mean, eventually, you know, all the housemates as well from Hal's bed and breakfast help her out distributing leaflets to asking about the whereabouts of Jed. We see that Lyta is loving her sleeping at the moment.
Yes,
she is enjoying what's going on in her dreams with her dead husband.
Yeah.
Effectively ghost sex, I guess, is what's happening. I think that's
sex.
how she describes it. Yeah. Or dream sex, yes. But it's, she's kind of a bit out of it here. I mean, she does help, but she's, in a sense, she's having a lie in, really, because her dreams are so personal to her, with them being all about Hector and effectively this world that he has created, and this house that is based on designs that they both brought up, that they were going to do as architects, and so on. And he's built this in the dreaming. He's made some modifications and so on. Yeah. So a really kind of interesting moment here that, you know, in a sense, her dreams are becoming more vivid, more realistic, with her dead husband that she obviously misses very, very much.
Absolutely. And there's even that moment that he says to her that he doesn't feel like he's a dream at all, because when she wakes up, he's still there and he still works and he still builds this house for her effectively. So that's quite interesting that he isn't disappearing at the end of the dream. So he feels like he's kind of still there, connected to her.
Yeah, and
just a proper grand design on that house. That
is definitely amazing, yeah, pretty good. Yeah. And it's also, you know, sort of the inquisitiveness, you know, from Lyta. What do you do in the dream? You know, this is before he shows everything that he's been doing, but included in this is a nursery. You know, it was their dream, and he's looking to convince her to stay with him in the dream, which, you know, I guess Lyta possibly has some, you know, she probably has some desire to do that in many respects. But, you know, she does ask the question that would be on the tip of probably most people's mind. Well, but there's the real world that I have to get back to, you know, because ultimately it's about saying sleep forever. It's almost like the sleepy sickness in a sense.
Basically, yeah. So he's trying to ask her to choose that, effectively. But you may have just hit on something there, John, that there is a desire within Lyta to do this, and it's a temptation to stay there with her husband.
Oh, maybe.
You may have just hit on something there.
I don't know.
Yeah.
If it is, it's purely by accident.
Yes. But that's the nature of what's happening in the show. It should be sparking these ideas in you. But that's one of the dreams, and we do see that Rose goes into all of the dreams of her housemates. She does see Lyta and Hector together in their dreams, and will we go through the dreams of the new family of Rose? Because I think there's some really interesting stuff in here.
Yeah.
Some of these dreams more important than others, but dreams tend to reveal a side of yourself from the waking world that you may want to keep hidden. You know, Lyta may not have wanted Rose to know that she's sleeping with her dead husband in a dream. You know, I don't think anybody who's having a wet dream wants somebody else being inside it and seeing what's going on. Yeah. So there's part of that. We see Hal, who we've seen doing his drag show in the previous episode. We see him and his counterpart, I guess, Dolly, on stage, and we get a nice horror moment, really, because the boundary here between Hal and Dolly and their personas is blurred a bit. What we have is Dolly on stage singing to Hal in bed, and then she stops and says, "This isn't my real face," and rips it off, and it's Hal underneath, understandably, and then she said, "But this also isn't my real face," and rips it off further and ends off with this skeletal form underneath it all.
Yeah, and she even says, "I need more hands," as though she's going to rip more off, like the muscle, and so it'd just be the skeleton or something like that.
It's almost like this conversation of, well, where does Dolly end and where does Hal begin, almost between that's going on in Hal's dream. I think it's a really interesting representation of his character. You know, we hear a really interesting conversation between Rose and Hal about Rose saying, "I kind of like it here. It's a really relaxed place to be." And Hal's kind of going, "If someone told me that I could be on stage in Broadway, I would sell this house, say goodbye to these people, and never think about them again. Don't ever give up on your dreams just to stay in a quiet place like this. Go and follow your dreams." So it's a really inspirational moment, but it's also a moment of loss for Hal. He's lost that identity that he could have had for himself.
Absolutely. I thought that was a really excellent counterpoint to Hal's dream, is his waking world dream. In a sense, I would probably say it's his desire to be on Broadway, and that his desire would lead him to that, and to give up the bed and breakfast that was left to him in his grandmother's will. Yeah. You know, so it's interesting. It is dreaming about what to do, but in a sense as well, there is that desire underneath. Again, it's that a bit like with episode 6 with death. You see the connections between these different elements here in the same way that you got between death and dream. And so but I really enjoyed that counterpoint. Yeah. You know, as Rose is saying, she wants to go to grad school to become a writer. I thought that was a really kind of poignant moment for Hal, in terms of, you know, that opportunity missed, but if it ever reared its head, he would take it in an instant. Yeah,
absolutely. I love the joke almost from going, "Go there, write your book, write it now, so I'm still young enough to play myself in the movie. Exactly. Write it about me." I thought that was really good, but I do like that kind of simmering anger that he's kind of ended off in this position, because before, what you know of Hal is that he loves the people that he lives with. They're all family to him. He treats them all like this is their home and they're all the same residents, but he still knows that he's had to give up on his dream to be here. So he's making the best of this situation.
Yes.
But it's not a great situation.
Exactly.
Also, as we're going to go through the rest of the dreams of the other people that are in the household, just to note that the two of them have been out plastering the posters around town, and they come back to the house quite early. It seems to be about 8 or 9 o'clock, I would guess. Now, not definite, but they come back home quite early after doing this poster drop around the city, around the town, and everybody in the house is already asleep. So just keep that in mind, because remember, Lyta is on the same timeline, on the same pressure as Rose is, and she slept in, and now everybody in the house is asleep early and dreaming quite considerable dreams. So these are all supposed to be indications of what Rose is doing to this household by being in the vortex and being there.
It's the influence of Rose in that proximity and being the vortex.
So what is going on with Barbie and Ken here?
Well, there's some kind of argument. Something's happened.
Is Ken dreaming that Barbie thinks he's cheated on her?
I think so, yes.
So he's naked in the street and she's in an amazing sports car. It seems like that's Ken's dream, or Ken's nightmare almost, that the two of them who are inseparable and have this great joke about the two of their names being like the dolls, that he's afraid that she will leave him or she will dump him for maybe something that he hasn't done at all, because he's questioning why the hell is she in the car and not letting him in.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we've also we've mentioned this already with Lysa, but it's that awkward moment where Rose walks in on Lysa and Hector having ghost sex, and it's kind of like is spotted and must get out of here, and immediately
Move along.
heads on into Zelda's dream.
Yes, and a really interesting one with Zelda, because again, the way we're introduced to Zelda and Chantal in the first episode, the spider siblings or lovers or mother-daughter, or, is that nobody really knows anything about their history and who they are. And what we learn really here with Zelda and what's going on with her is that this is how she's always been. And finally she met someone like Chantal, because nobody understood her in her world. Nobody understood what the things she was interested in. Her parents wanted her to be a different type of person. And she met Chantal, and the two of them now share this love of the macabre. There's a great line in here, and it's definitely a Neil Gaiman line from the book, where she describes the cemetery where we see Rose meet her the second time as the Bone Orchard, which I love. Such an interesting description of a place that's really scary to a lot of people, but she finds a place of rest there. She finds a place of refuge there.
Refuge, beauty. Yeah, exactly. It was really good.
And one thing that's guiding Rose through each of these dreams all the way along are actually these posters. So we see the posters that she's been putting up for Jed. We see the words being all mixed up in the first dream, but we see that that's what guides her to the next place. And then as she moves through the dream, she sees these posters everywhere, like the touch in the last one, that when she's in Zelda's dream and going into the crypt, we see the poster on there, but we also see the help note that Jed wrote in the real world appearing suddenly on that note saying, please help me, in his handwriting. So a lovely touch that she's much more powerful traveling through everybody's dreams than you would expect her to be, Well,
exactly. There is also that moment as Morpheus meets her in the dream where it suddenly opens up into this porpentine.
Ah, yes.
Which I'm not entirely sure what happened there, but it seemed to be that this is Morpheus explaining to Rose that, this power for her to move between other people's dreams as the vortex is also matched as much by being able to dream herself of entire worlds.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we get to meet Lady Barbara and Martin Tenbones, comic book characters. I was wondering how they'd bring this in here, because it doesn't fit what's going on. And again, if you're watching along with the dreams, trying to pick things up for how the stories go in the future, which would be what you'd normally see dreams used as in lots of other shows. Dreams are used all the time in narrative storytelling. Of course, it's a great way to explore the character, but this bit doesn't fit, does it? This Lady Barbara and Martin Tenbones on the quest for the porpentine, because you don't know what the words are. Martin Tenbones, this monster-looking character who's talking and speaking to Barbie about the quest. He looks like a kind of protector character, but doesn't really look like any kind of creature or animal that you've seen before. And then that's it. Cut. We have no idea who they are. We never see them in the real world. We never have an interaction with Rose with them. So the explanation that we have here from Morpheus of these are other created worlds that Rose could have power over, could have dominion over, is a really interesting description of it. I like that it was put here in the episode to give some kind of context for something that is completely out of context. We did see the character of Martin Tenbones before we saw him in the first episode, when we saw the dreaming at its height of power. We saw Martin Tenbones on a ship right at the start, so he is a member of the dreaming, let's say. Voiced here by Lenny Henry,
Yes.
a frequent collaborator of Neil Gaiman. Also going to be in, I think, Nancy Boys, which is another adaptation of Neil Gaiman's book in the future, and also currently being seen in The Rings of Power, Lord of the Rings of Power, which we're covering on TV Podcast Industry as well. So it's getting lots of Lenny Henry at the moment.
Definitely, really good.
But what did you think of the look, can I ask, of this Martin Tenbones creature at this moment? I know it probably came out of nowhere and doesn't make any sense right now, but
I thought Martin Tenbones looked really good. I mean, it looked like a massive bear, but with like a moustache at the front, in a sense. And then at the end, you kind of have Lady Barbara with this sort of bright light that she's going for. I'm guessing that's the Porpentine.
Porpentine, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. It was not entirely clear to me, but as I say, what I took from this was as Morpheus had come to guide her, in a sense, it was explaining to her, because he had said to her that she was the Vortex.
Yes.
He was saying, you have the ability to dream entire worlds here.
Yeah.
And influence even the dreams from the dream realm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important to have something like this in the show in itself, because if you fall back on everybody has a dream, and when they have a dream, it all makes complete narrative sense and connects into the story of the waking world. If you continue to have that all the time, then you lose what dreams are really like for most people. They're sorting out and cataloging and having dreams of adventure that you could never possibly have in the real world. Some people have really expressive dreams. Some things come absolutely out of nowhere. So by having it in here, it does give you a bit more of a sense of the dreaming and the vast scope of it. So we may see more. Hopefully we'll see more of Martin Tenbones and Lady Barbara and their quest in the future. But it does come out of nowhere, and I just wanted to quickly have a chat about it. So I'm glad you enjoyed at least the quick see that we got, but it is supposed to come out of nowhere and make no sense right now.
Yes.
So, there you go.
But this guide of Morpheus, they ultimately end up in suburbia. And this is where we see Rose having come into Jed's dream.
Yeah.
That it's almost like a sub-dream world that's why it's disconnected. But we see at the start Jed being tasked by his mum to take on the Pied Piper and the rats, all the children gone from the suburbs.
Yeah.
And so we see him there as the Sandman, using a pouch of sand to be able to whisk in and so on. And so here we have Rose and Morpheus coming in, and of course then Galt, who looks like Jed's mother, sees Morpheus in their kind of control room that she's directing operations. You know, this is almost like Alfred the Butler,
Exactly.
for Batman, you know, but for the Sandman, and she's helping Jed to take on these different foes to protect people. And this I thought was just really good, how this whole thing kind of played out once they're in Jed's dream, you know, which firstly, it was just really nice for them to meet. You know, Rose has finally found her brother, but it's not in the waking world, it's in the dream world. And you see Galt as their mother come in, and you hear Morpheus talking. You know, Jed is immediately afraid for his mother.
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
which I really like that kind of spin. Rose having to effectively try and say, you know, this isn't the real world, Jed. You know, he doesn't know that. And also, it's the first indication that Morpheus is a bit of a douchebag as well.
Yeah, because Rose has been trying to find Jed, and the arrangement that she made with Morpheus was, I'll look for him in the waking world, you look for him in dreaming, and we'll come together, pool our resources, and then I'll find my brother. They pool their resources, and all Morpheus is concerned with is getting Galt out of the dreaming, pulling her back to to the dream realm from where she's been for the last 100 years, possibly doing this to multiple people over the years. But she's been focusing on Jed, creating this idea of him being like Morpheus, being the Sandman of this world,
Yes.
being the one that has that power. And what's interesting about that, in case you don't know, that version of the Sandman was the original version of the Sandman before Neil Gaiman came along, took the character from DC and turned him into Morpheus. The character of the Sandman did exist in comics and had those powers that Jed is using. So a callback to the DC Comics version of Sandman. I think he last appeared in the 70s. But it's a little touch, a little
Yeah,
nod,
it's a
nod
great
to that
little
as well.
touch.
And it makes sense to do it that way, to have Jed being the Sandman here. Also little touches, because just to call out again, people have been saying constantly throughout the season, isn't it awful that this show is completely disconnected from the DC universe, so we don't get appearances from the Justice League in the show like we did in the first couple of issues of the comic book. Here we had our appearances of the Justice League. We had the Flash, we had Batman, and we had Wonder Woman. Statues or collectible figures all surrounding the console where Gult was sitting. So the DC universe does exist in here, but they may just exist the same way that it exists in our world, where kids buy toys of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, it's, you know, it, as you say, it's that notion that Morpheus, once he has found Galt, is looking to take them back. It's almost as though he's then not interested
Yes.
in anything else. It is to his conversation with Lucienne about using Rose to draw in these entities.
Yeah.
And it seems as though Galt is actually a really powerful nightmare, because she's managed to, in effect, separate Jed from Morpheus's power.
Yeah.
An ability to watch and know what's going on in the dream world, almost creating, as you say, a separate dream world. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
I love the design of Galt as well, but
Oh, it's fabulous when they change her back from being their mother.
Yeah.
The look is amazing. It's really cool.
But here we have Galt being taken back to Morpheus's palace.
Yeah.
But also then it's just, and then Jed wakes up. There's no real thought for Jed
Exactly.
at all by Morpheus. So it's really interesting because, you know, we say how this season is split into two separate storylines, and yet with episode 6, it was very much about Morpheus reconnecting with humanity, or at least understanding them and realizing that they have worth. And then it seems like this is discarded here in many respects. And maybe it's just simply because he's still smarting from being held captive, that he wants order back in his realm, and these are outstanding problems for him. But it was kind of it felt like he hadn't fully learnt the message that death was trying to give him.
Yeah, it's a journey. Let's say Morpheus is on the road, he's on the journey, but the way he's seeing this here is that Galt is living outside of the dreaming and exploiting a human. She's exploiting Jed. She's living off him. Galt is protecting herself, saying that I'm doing this for his protection. He's being horribly abused by his foster father.
Yeah.
And if I wasn't giving him these dreams and he was just in the land of the dreaming, he could be experiencing all those fears in his dreams. He could be going through nightmares all the time, having to deal with what's going on with the abuse of his father or stepfather. So that's her version of the story. But don't forget, Morpheus is saying, dreams allow people to experience those issues and deal with them in a way and they allow them to be protected. So by severing her from his dreams and taking Jed back into the dreaming, he may be able to deal with his horrible experiences in a better way. But having him be a superhero in this dream over and over again isn't actually helping him. That's just what you think is happening, Galt, basically.
Yeah.
But you're right. The severing of the dream just before Rose gets the full information from Jed as to where he is. At least she gets enough information to find him or find the location of him. It's interesting. That's almost exactly what happened with Joanna Constantine when Dream was looking for his helm from the demon, and Joanna Constantine threw the demon back to hell before Morpheus could interrogate him and get that information. So it's almost like he's doing something that he wouldn't want anybody else to do. So
Yes.
you should have held on for 2 more seconds while Rose got that information from Jed.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think we should bring it on to Galt as well here back in the dream realm, because I actually really, really love this. I love the challenge that Galt did to Morpheus. This notion that, as you say, she did it because it protected Jed from, gave him hope in a sense, because of all the abuse that his foster father, Barnaby was doing to him. And you hear the threat of him having all his bones broken, being locked down in the cellar. And that, Galt was looking to build Jed's dreams and not a nightmare in order to inspire and not frighten him. And the idea that Galt wanted to change, didn't want to just be a nightmare to terrorize people, and that, wanted to become a dreamer, to create dreams, and that was Galt's dream, effectively, was to be able to change. And, Morpheus is literally has none of it. It's this is your role, this is your function, and no, you can't change. And he's just absolutely adamant. He is blinkered in that sense as to what is being told, even with Lucienne there, and it causes, a tension within that relationship, as Lucienne says, well, I had to change when you were gone, and take on new responsibilities and roles, which seems to annoy him even further. And he kind of gets a bit uppity with Lucienne even. So this is almost illustrative of Morpheus being really possessive of and controlling about what he does. It is purely about, like his control, and banishes Galt because of almost this heresy to his viewpoint, to the darkness. But even then, Galt is steadfastly defiant, against this, arrogance, really, of the Sandman, to say, I'm not afraid to go to the darkness, like other dreams and nightmares that have been banished. So I just thought this was really exceptional. I really loved the concepts, just the performance of it, all of it, and the connection with Jed. You thought there was something really awful going on. Galt was Jed's hope and inspiration here. And Morpheus acts like a complete douchebag. I could use stronger words, but it's PG podcast.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's like, I just thought this was like really good. And again, just the characterization then of the Sandman, you think he's going to be more open, more reciprocal to everything that's happened here. Certainly because it involved a human and Galt was actually being protective.
Yeah. Again, her description of it, and it's really important, and I'm not defending Morpheus or anything like that. It's really important to remember.
I reckon.
He is the Lord of Dreams and Nightmares. That is his role. He has that dual role. It's not that he's a good guy all the time that makes humans happy. He knows there's a reason for both things. It's important for people to experience and go through things. And he feels that there is a therapeutic element of going through a nightmare. What is really concerning with him is him thinking that he's the creator of everything in his realm and none of them can change. And he has 2 examples standing right in front of him. One, Lucienne, who stood up and became the Lord of Dreams while he wasn't there. And the other one, Galt, who wants to be anything other than a nightmare. We've also met another earlier on in the season. We met Gregory the Gargoyle, who was created as a nightmare and became a really lovely gargoyle living with Cain and Abel. So right here, Morpheus is wrong.
Yes.
You are correct in that. Morpheus is wrong in his opinion, but this is his opinion and he's going to force it down the throat of everybody.
Exactly.
In the argument with Galt there, she's telling him the reason why everybody left was they didn't stay here because they loved you and would keep the realm going with you missing. They all left because you were no longer here. And when you came back, they came back because they were afraid you would punish them all for staying away. So he's been holding the whole realm together for millennia now, because people fear if they go away from the realm, he'll punish them.
He is a monarch of his realm.
Yeah.
And, a complete authoritarian. I mean, even the Corinthian is evidence of change within the dream.
Yes.
You know? Yeah. In terms of wanting to act it out in the waking world.
Yeah.
As opposed to the dream world.
Yeah, I'd probably be chasing the Corinthian down much quicker than I was going after Gold.
And I mean, if he does this to Gold, what is he going to do to the Corinthian?
Oh, exactly. I'm sure we'll find that out later on in the season. But will we go on from Gold? Is there anything else you want to talk about with Gold at all?
Nope. Not from my side. I think we should move on to the Corinthian.
Yes.
Again, just lovely creepiness from the Corinthian. And
it's not really explained in the show. And I've said before, the Corinthian, we see more of him here in the TV show than we saw in the comics. He's kept to the background until they want to make a big scary moment with him coming out and killing people around him. You know, here we're getting a bit more of him. But it seems that he does have a kind of a superpower type attractiveness to people. It feels like every time he talks to someone, they instantly listen and instantly want to be with them. We see that with two characters here. We see that with Hal. When he walks up to Hal is instantly going, ooh, I want his number.
Yes.
And then, or give him my number to Rose. And we also see it when he goes to the foster care agent, who was completely ignoring Rose and Lyta when they came to her. She was pretty rude to the idea, at least, of giving Rose any kind of information. I know she can't do it. That's her job. Ms. Rubio, yes. And then when Lyta came in, she had a conversation with her, but again, wasn't very friendly. But it seemed like she was very open when Corinthian walked in through the door. And then, unfortunately, it led to, her last moments. At least her last moments with eyes.
Yes, and you hear the crunch of the eye as it's devoured by the mouth eyes, I guess.
Yeah.
So, I mean, poor Ms. Rubio, I guess constrained by the rules and the law book as to what she can and can't do, but ultimately, I really like the shorthand of the Corinthian making his way to Cape Kennedy, via Unity Kincaid, then seeing Rose, he can see her, almost touch her. Is probably and almost being drawn to her power. And yet Matthew being there, he suddenly is kind of oh right, better go. Can't be spotted by him
because Morpheus will see me. Basically,
and comes up with this new approach. After speaking with Hal, to effectively get to Rose through Jed by rescuing Jed. Weirdly, this brutal murderer is the savior of Jed. The person that you want to escape the confines of the cellar from the brutality of his Uncle Barnaby, the ineffectiveness of his aunt, is strangely rescued by the Corinthian. But I love how when he comes up from the cellar, Jed, everything's in a bit of chaos, and you see Corinthian coming to the end of the hallway as Jed's making his way to the door, sort of putting a bloody rag into his back pocket. But effectively, sweet, warm words here of your sister sent me, and, for Jed, this guy is his savior. Is the person that's going to get him out of this house and out and away from his Uncle Barnaby.
Yeah. Kind of glad to see Barnaby lose his eyes in this episode. And, again, you don't have to focus on it. You don't have to see what Corinthian's done to them. We know enough now about what Corinthian has done to have an idea that he went through a very painful death.
Oh, exactly. I mean, the only issue is that for the Corinthian, he doesn't necessarily care that much for Jed.
Well, exactly. Unless, of course, if it gets him what he wants, which is to have access to Rose, he will be the most protective version of Jed.
Absolutely, in this moment. But his goal is Rose.
Absolutely. What a great choice for the music on the end of the big bad wolf as they drive down the highway away from where Jed was.
Yes.
So just showing that he has the big bad wolf in the car with him, which is a good little touch there. And Rose gets to the house because in the dream with Jed, he's given her the information of Barnaby and Clarice and the fact that they live in this homeland estate. So she's been able to search where he would have been, gets there too late and finds the murder scene with both of them dead.
Yeah, exactly.
And no sign at all of Jed. So she's lost all of her leads. All that work that she did with Morpheus to get Jed through the land of the dreaming has ended off not working out at all for her. So she's got nothing left now. She's got no more connection, and no connection to Morpheus being able to help her out again next time.
Exactly. I think the other thing on this point with Corinthian that I really quite liked as well was seeing Jed write the note that he tries to get to Miss Rubio when she comes to visit, when Light is kind of convinced her to at least check in on him, see how he's doing. Yeah. And you think it's been successful, and you see the Corinthian arrive into Miss Rubio's office as she's looking through her bag, and to disrupts her, and takes her attention away from what she's doing. And you're thinking, the note's in there, and you're about to die. But then you realize that Uncle Barnaby has intercepted the note. So in a sense, it is, in many respects, other than Rose getting to him first, this is then the quickest way for Jed to escape the horrors of that foster home. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I just like that touch of how the sequence of events went.
Mm-hmm. It's really good, isn't it? Because it makes you kind of really scared for Miss Rubio when the knock comes to the door and you're going, oh no, poor Jed, he won't be able to get that note, won't get out there. But maybe somebody else will find the note, is what you're kind of thinking. Hopefully not the Corinthian. And then you find out that Barnaby has already found it, and Jed is about to get really badly punished for that.
Yeah, so, and of course the Corinthian finds Jed through the eyes of Miss Rubio.
And the files on the table as well.
Yes. Exactly.
Good stuff. Any notes for the episode? Anything else you wanted to call out that we haven't talked about?
Just from my side, we mentioned about Lysa, that at the end when she wakes up, she is pregnant in the real world, not just in the dreaming, which is, to me, kind of confirms how I thought Unity Kincaid became pregnant effectively, because of her dreams. I guess she was going through all the emotions and all different aspects of her life as she grew older asleep. Yeah. So this was part of the reason.
Very good, John. Yes, that could absolutely be it. Still no firm explanation for it, but yes, Unity Kincaid became pregnant while asleep, just like Lysa has become pregnant here. Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe even just she has some similar abilities to Rose, at being related in some ways, or the dream vortex is strong in my family. Kind of little Star Warsy here. I don't know, but again, it's a better explanation in this story than one of an orderly coming in. And raping her while she's asleep in hospital. So, I thought that was a good touch to bring in.
Absolutely, because that's never been discussed. That's not the connection to this family at all. We have Rose as the Vortex now, great granddaughter of Unity Kincaid. So now we have a little bit more explanation. See, as the show goes on, all this stuff builds, as we've said before. I just had one moment I wanted to talk about because it made me laugh, which was Barbie and Ken, who constantly joke about their names being Barbie and Ken, who are about to go out and hang out with Cindy, the realtor, their best friend. They're going to hang out with her all day.
Excellent.
Cindy is the English version of Barbie. It was the product replacement in the UK. Not really. That sounds terrible, but it was the English doll that was done to sell dolls along the same time as Barbie. So I love that they have a friend called Cindy.
Yes, perfect.
Good stuff. Overall, what did you think of the episode, John?
Really, really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was really tense. I'd give this 4.5 ghostly rumpy pumpies out of 5. I thought Galt was it was a really good storyline, with young Jed. It really made, with what Jed was going through at the hands of his Uncle Barnaby, and as I said, the effective and the ineffectualness of his Aunt Clarice, just really made, both Jed and Galt's story really poignant here. Yeah. I really enjoyed Morpheus and Rose coming together, and then just seeing that Morpheus maybe hasn't adopted some of the things or taken on board some of the things that his sister Death has said in the past. As you say, I think that's a good point. It's a journey. It's not like he's suddenly changed overnight, but I just like this because it really was not a Morpheus that I could sort of go with, really. So God only knows what my dreams are going to be like in the next 24 hours if he does exist in the real world. But I really enjoyed that, and seeing Rose travel through her housemates' dreams, from the bed and breakfast as well. Just really, really good. So yeah, and the Corinthian is just a fantastic boogeyman, really, all the way through. To me, Boyd Holbrook just has the same energy and vibe and persona on screen as Anthony Starr does as Homelander to some extent. Like but in with a different vibe, with a different rationale behind it. He's just so frightening.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
As a concept. He's attractive. He's charming. He's manipulative. Everything that would allow you to let your guard down around him. And he's also murderous. And that's where it hits you, dare I say it, between the eyes or in both of the eyes. So he's a terrifying character and played absolutely to aplomb by Boyd Holbrook.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. And I think that's the thing, because we as an audience have seen what he does to everybody, and he tends nobody else knows that that's him doing those murders. So us seeing him interact with anybody, you're going, Hal, don't let him in the door. He may take you out next, or
exactly.
You have that nervousness for everybody he bumps into.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I'd give this 4.5 ghostly rumpy pumpies out of 5.
Excellent.
Derek, your thoughts on Chapter 8?
I'm really glad you enjoyed this one. That's my first thoughts on this. I really enjoyed it as well. I think doing these kind of moments and taking the story to these places where Rose is traveling through the dreams of all of her housemates, and you're seeing kind of different versions of how dreams are playing out, and some are really complex, like what is going on with Martin Tenbones and Lady Barbara. What's that all about? Or why are we suddenly back in time with Zelda and her memories of Chantal? And why is she standing up in front of an audience saying that she's in love with a sentence? This is why I love Sandman as a comic book. It's not a strict narrative from start to finish. And the other element that's brought in here and brought very much to the forefront is Sandman isn't the hero of this story either. Morpheus is the person that the whole thing is pinned on, because we're talking about dreaming as a concept, but he's not the hero. He's not the person that you go to when you have a problem. He's the one that is responsible for all dreams, all nightmares. So he has that really complex side to him. He is a great character in himself. And the moments here where he's being challenged by Lucienne, who we've grown to really like as the season's has been going on, the put upon help, effectively, who was left in charge for 100 years, and now she's banished back to the library by Morpheus. We're seeing how cruel and brutal he can be, because it's his way or the highway. And while he was away, every single member of the Dreaming chose to leave, apart from 4 or 5 people chose to run away and took the highway, effectively. So, and now they're all back. So hearing that about him, getting that side of the story being told here in this episode is really good. It is definitely supposed to be watched as these 4 episodes back to back together as an arc, because we're setting up the big storyline of what's going on with Rose the Vortex, and that part is being drip fed to us throughout these 4 episodes. So
yeah, definitely.
So it's a good episode. Really enjoyed it, but I'm sure most people are watching this as a 4-episode arc together.
Yeah, definitely. Good stuff. Well, fellow dreamers, that's our thoughts on Chapter 8. Let us get into some of your own thoughts with our feedback section. Just a quick reminder, you can send in any thoughts to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, or you can join us over on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries, where we put up a spoiler post for each episode of The Sandman. So we'd love to hear your thoughts. And first off, on Chapter 7, we have some feedback from Victor Von Doom. Victor says, "Greetings, dreamers. Yes, Desire definitely reminds me of Loki. Just like Loki, Desire seems to always have a co-conspirator, this time in despair. Rose and Unity were portrayed beautifully. The collectors, or these ghouls, in general, were very unnerving. The casual way they discussed their proclivities as business as usual was really, really disgusting. As a fan of Broadway shows, I really loved Hal's Ethel Merman stage routine. Jed's Fosters were a disappointment.
Just a bit.
Hoping Dream has plans for Barnaby. More Joanna Constantine, please. Nighty night, dreamers." Thanks so much, Victor. Yes, really would like to see more Joanna Constantine for sure. I don't know whether we're going to get Joanna in these remaining episodes, but yes, nonetheless, really would like to see her back. And Dream should certainly have some plans for Barnaby. He's an absolute rotten. Well, Victor, I don't think that it's Dream, given what we just saw. It is certainly Corinthian that had plans for Barnaby, although I would be really interested to have seen Dream's sister arrive on the scene to effectively sort of tell him to take the stairs downwards and take him on his way to meet Lucifer Morningstar.
To see what's next, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what Death would say to Barnaby. Not sure if we're going to get Joanna Constantine again this season. I hope if we get a season 2 that they may be able to work her into some future stories. It'd be kind of cool. Thanks for that, Victor. Good to hear your thoughts on our Chapter 7 podcast. We also got some feedback from Lara Willie Swinker on that podcast. Lara says, "Wonderful episode, gents. You all had me in stitches with your repartee about IKEA resets of the Dreaming and Lethal walking canes. I'm so pleased that I inspired John to read the comic books. Sorry, Derek. And also pleased that I inspired a deep discussion of Crocs, a product that was created and produced in my own home state of Colorado. Thank you sincerely for this truly excellent coverage, though. I'm fully enjoying it." Oh, thanks, Lara.
Yeah, thanks so much, Lara. And thank you for inspiring me to read the comics once again. Really good.
Yeah, you're adding to the inspiration,
Yes.
Lara. I'm sure John has always wanted to read them, but pretended he didn't have the time. And now, now he has no further excuses.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true. Thanks so much, Lara. For Chapter 8 feedback, Dr. Bob Phillips says, "This presentation of abuse, constraint, then bloody enucleation and the popping of a vitreous snack. Hope is provided in the face of your creator, undeterred, and compare and contrast approaches to the mastery of Dream from the English ancient and the American teen, made for a cracking watch. Can't believe there's only 2 plus 2 halves left. We need more seasons." Indeed we do, Dr. Bob.
Yes, we do.
Actually, I hadn't really kind of taken on that idea of the American teen dream through Jed, compared to Zelda's dream with that sort of gothic ancient, sort of graveyard and so on. Yeah, really, really interesting.
Excellent stuff, Dr. Bob. Thank you very much for your feedback as well. We also got a piece of feedback in from Coffee and Vodka, who says, "Greetings, fellow rat-ridden defenders. Another well-produced episode filled with nuance and quiet terror. The Terminator 2 reference, 'Have you seen this boy?' was both laugh out loud and chilling, furthering the endgame within endgames, which began last episode. Started slow, but swiftly built in pitch. The illegible writing within the dream was a nice touch. Hal once again elevated the show with his presence. Face on or off. Although my MVP this episode was Sam Hazeltine's Uncle Barnaby. Rarely has cruel and brutal pettiness been more affecting, or an on-screen death less deserved. An amazing acting feat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally. You really just dislike Uncle Barnaby.
Yeah. And that's a great role to play as an actor, I'm sure. Even though it's really difficult to watch, you gotta definitely respect the acting chops of somebody that can get you to hate them that much when they're on screen. Finally, Coffee and Vodka says, seeing Martin Tembodes made me wonder if we might see the Cuckoo in future seasons, though it might have to be explained to John who that is. Just saying, Sandman's termination of the dream once he'd achieved his goal was perfectly in character, as was his out-of-hand dismissal of Galt's change of character and motive, though this too may be subject to change. Finally, the Corinthian riding off into the horizon with Jed let us know the fuse has officially been lit. 4.5 hellscapes, dream conceptions, and small sandmen out of 5. Peace and take care, Coffee and Vodka. Interesting. Coffee and Vodka has provided you with a little nod to something coming possibly in the future with the Cuckoo, and I'm not spoiling anything now that you're going to read the comic books. But yes, Martin Tembodes will hopefully be seen again if we get a future season of the show.
Yes, great stuff as well, Coffee and Vodka. I do like your 4.5 hellscapes. That is perfect
Very
in
good.
my eyes.
Yeah.
And indeed, Hal very much just missed a hellscape of his own if he had gotten into the crosshairs of the Corinthian, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yes, I will probably go cuckoo, waiting for the Cuckoo to appear as I try and weave my way through the Sandman, through the TV show. Be interesting when I do get down to read the comics, which I might do on holiday, at least the first few. So that will be pretty good to get in there. And
I have a couple of smaller volumes that we can carry with us. You don't have to bring the big tomes.
No, I wouldn't be able to take it on the plane.
That's true.
The plane wouldn't take off. Exactly.
Take up the full 20 kilos.
And I think you're absolutely right around Sam Hazeldine's Uncle Barnaby. Really, really good. And I missed the Terminator 2 reference actually as well.
We didn't call it out. I definitely noticed it because I think we've seen have you seen this boy? I think we've seen that quite a lot in Terminator 2, which we watched again a couple of weeks ago. So I definitely noticed the reference. Forgot to call it out, but thanks so much, Coffee and Vodka, for your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks again, Coffee and Vodka. Robert Williams says on episode 8, wow, thank you so much for answering my last email. Derek's explanation about the star of the story being the story itself is like putting in contact lenses to see the show in a much more interesting and clear way. And the collectors, the fact that they are just human serial killers, brings a certain sense of humour that made me laugh after watching it again. Well, the characters playing them are not the fact they kill people.
Well, yes.
And makes me very curious where this storyline goes. Okay, a couple of things for 8. Jed, is he a dream vortex like his sister? And a very interesting ethics minefield for Dream, navigating how to rescue or not rescue his creations and humans when he has the ability to do both. But should he? Great thought experiments, Mr. Gaiman and team. Last, thank you in advance discussing all the other things I had thoughts on but didn't know I had. Stay well and thank you, Robert. Great, thanks, Robert, for your feedback there. Yeah, I'm wondering the same thing about Jed as well. As I say, whether the dream vortex is strong in the Kincaid family.
Maybe.
You know? Yeah. Maybe there's something there. But I don't know. And Derek may not spoil it, of course.
Yeah.
For sure.
I'm not going to spoil out what we do. All we know right now is Rose is the dream vortex is how she's been referred to. That one is born into the world at a time. So it's like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Just because she has a sister doesn't mean her sister's a slayer.
Well, that is true. That is true. And yeah, I think I guess maybe that's to the point around the ethics of whether Dream should be saving Jed or not. It's in some ways it's not his role as you're saying, but I wonder if it becomes his role when you're dealing with his escaped nightmares like Galt and certainly the Corinthian.
He did save Jed. He saved him from Gult.
He did.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. He did. Yeah. I just thought if Jed was that's true, because he was disconnected from the dreaming.
Yep.
I was just thinking more Gult saving Jed from the awfulness that was his foster home. Yeah,
but Gult wasn't putting Jed into a dreaming state and protecting him. He was still going through and suffering all of that abuse. And the point from Morpheus is that because he was severed from his normal dream state, he's not able to process those feelings. He's having this experience of being punished and being brutalized by his foster parents, and then being taken off to this land that isn't allowing him to process any of that, because it's just Goat feeding on this dreaming child. It's not doing anything for him at all. It's not giving him any kind of protection.
And in some ways, for the Sandman, he didn't save Jed either. It was purely a consequence of his actual motive, which was to bring his misbehaving nightmares and other entities from the dream world back. It just so happens Galt was connected with Jed, but it could have been Jack down the road.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't have to be Jed.
Absolutely. And the fact that, as we say, the brutalness of him ending the dream before Rose getting any more information or not having any more seconds there. It was literally, he was shutting down the dream and that's it. It's over. That's pretty brutal. There you go. Thanks so much, Robert, for your feedback as well. Hopefully we hear from you again for our next episode 9.
Absolutely. Thanks, Robert. And thank you so much, fellow dreamers, for joining us, for sending in your thoughts, theories and comments on Chapter 8. We really hope you stay subscribed to the podcast. And if you enjoyed what you hear, please, of course, rate us, leave a review, and share the podcast with friends, family, and indeed your dreams, because sharing the podcast is, of course, sharing the love.
Absolutely.
You can, of course, subscribe to tvpodcastindustries.com, and you can support us over on patreon.com/tvpodcastindustries or buymeacoffee.com/tvpi.
Absolutely. And if you've heard our other podcasts that we've been recording this week, the Rings of Power and She-Hulk, which we recorded in the last week, we are going on holiday next week, but we are hoping to get one more episode of The Sandman recorded before we go, and you'll get that next week. We'll be hopefully talking about The Sandman Chapter 9, Collectors, which you'll get this day next week. So that'll be something to listen to while we're away on holidays.
Yes, absolutely. We will still be scheduling whilst we are doing nothing and relaxing, I guess.
Exactly. Crossing fingers that it'll all work out that way. So if you don't hear our episode about Collectors next week, you'll hear it the week after when we get back from holidays, because I'll have no way to put it up if I haven't put it up before I go.
Exactly. But we hope you'll be back with us next time for our discussion of The Sandman, Chapter 9, Collectors.
Yep. See you then. Thanks for joining us.
Yep. Fellow dreamers, as always, a pleasure chit-chatting to you about the dream world. I can't wait to speak with you again. But before then, remember, keep watching, keep listening, and keep dreaming. Nighty night.
Bye.
Bye.